When the original Splitgate launched, it kind of felt like a revelation. At a time when FPS genre was stagnating something ferocious, developer 1047 Games introduced something new while at the same time appealing to what made the genre great in the first place, ironically, with going back to more of an old school vibe. But they came up with an arena shooter mechanics blended with the physics-defying creativity of Portals. The result was an addictive and also competitive, fresh experience that evoked classic feelings of Halo, while offering something kind of modern as well. It wasn't just fun, it was different, while being familiar. Players flocked to it, streamers helped it go viral, and in 2021 the game peaked at over 67,000 concurrent users on Steam. Splitgate had momentum, it had identity, and it had potential. So when 1047 Games announced Splitgate 2, expectations were pretty high. A sequel built from the ground up, promising bigger maps, faster servers, better visuals, and a full reimagining of the gameplay experience. But instead of elevating the franchise, Splitgate 2 became a cautionary tale. A misstep in nearly every major area of game development and marketing. What should have been a new beginning became a collapse. And in the process, it erased the very game that fans had come to love. This is the story of Splitgate 2, a game that didn't just fail to live up to hype, it helped destroy the momentum of an emerging franchise. Splitgate 2's problems began almost immediately. The beta launch, which is a very critical moment for any multiplayer game, was riddled with issues. Players couldn't even log in, matchmaking failed, and connection errors made it nearly impossible to complete a single match. And then on top of that, they actually turned off the servers for a little bit. These weren't minor bugs, these were straight up showstoppers. For a live service multiplayer shooter, reliability isn't just optional, it's a core foundation. First impressions are everything, and Splitgate 2's beta suggested that 1047 Games had underestimated the technical complexity of its own ambitions. This wasn't a small indie team experimenting anymore. This was a studio with tens of millions in funding and a player base expecting a premium experience. Unfortunately, the beta's failures soured public perception. While some players were willing to give the benefit of the doubt, such as me, others simply just walked away, disappointed and frustrated. When your first handshake with the community is a misfire, it takes a monumental effort to rebuild trust. And Splitgate 2 just failed with that. At the full launch of the game, Splitgate 2 managed a respectable peak of 25,000 concurrent players. Granted, they did also shadow drop a battle royale as well, which we will talk about in a little bit, but the numbers just didn't hold. Within 2 weeks, the daily peaks had dropped by over 60%. This fall up isn't simply just steep, it's outright devastating. For a live service game where community size directly correlates with queue times, match quality, and future content, a sharp drop such as this is a potential death blow. By late June of 2025, Splitgate 2 was already struggling to retain interest. And compare that to the original game, which had a much higher peak but also managed to sustain a strong, enthusiastic user base for months. This contrast is stark and just goes to show you how damaging a bad launch can be, even in a beta. But it turns out this fallout wasn't just limited to player counts. Behind the scenes, the studio itself is in trouble. On June 21st, reports emerged that 1047 Games had laid off a significant portion of the Splitgate 2 development team. And even more surprising was the CEO, Ian Porlax, I think is how you pronounce his name, and don't worry, we're going to be talking about him in a little bit. His decision to suspend his own salary to keep the company afloat. That is respectable, don't get me wrong, but that does show you that you are in some serious trouble. These just aren't normal post-launch decisions. These are signs of a project that catastrophically missed its financial targets. While revenue numbers weren't made public, the sudden layoffs make it clear Splitgate 2 had not delivered the commercial success the studio was counting on. And with its smaller team and shaken morale, the game's post-launch support has become questionable at best. Now, we can't continue without talking about the CEO's appearance at Summer Game Fest, where he appeared on stage with the infamous hat that said "Make FPS Great Again," and it caused a whole bunch of liberals to freak out on Twitter and have a complete meltdown. Now, in my perspective, there was nothing wrong with the hat itself. I feel like he wasn't making a political statement. He just wanted to get his game talked about. The whole any publicity is good publicity type of thing, which is not really true, to be honest with you. That was his whole perspective. He just wanted to be talked about. but he came up there and he started talking about the state of Call of Duty, the state of FPS games in general, which is something I do believe needs to be made great again because it just simply isn't at the moment. I completely agree with him in this regard. And then a few days later, he put out an apology after saying he wasn't going to make an apology. So it just comes down to who are you trying to appeal to here? Because on one hand, you pissed all these people off, you didn't have a problem with it then. It just felt like such a desperate attempt to try to claw back and regain some players, but the people that you are apologizing to weren't playing in the first place, which is also ironic because a whole lot of the people that were cheering this decision were trying to make it political, also weren't playing the game. But this is where my core issue is with the whole make FPS great again hat. The hat itself, no problem. We want to talk about the stagnation of the FPS genre, complete agreement with him. But when your whole identity of Splitgate is supposed to focus on the more original Halo trilogy style of arena-based shooters, which I love to death by the way, and then you shadow drop a battle royale and bring out some of the most egregious expensive microtransaction bundles, you are copying all the worst trends in current FPS genre, which has caused to make it stagnant. Granted, the expensive as shit bundle, which was like over $100 USD, but it was on sale at the time, dropping it down to 80, has had its price like halved or something like that. But it never should have been that expensive to begin with. Just absolutely ridiculous in my opinion. And then to all the people that were defending it, saying it's a free-to-play game, I guarantee you these are the same people that will attack Warzone and Apex bundles if they're overpriced. I think they should all be attacked. It's quite simple. Make FPS great again applies to the whole genre. A lot of the reviews over on Steam as well, which by the way is sitting at a mixed score, but a lot of those reviews are pointing out to the pricing of that bundle and how it was just absolutely ridiculous. Within days of this happening, the studio slashed the cosmetic prices by 50%, but by then the damage had already been done. In this world of free-to-play games, trust is basically a currency, and whatever Splitgate 2 had left, they kind of got rid of when the CEO came out and apologized for wearing a hat. But in regards to the actual game itself, the portal mechanic is what made Splitgate unique in the original game. It added depth and a sense of strategic creativity that helped distinguish it from its competitors. But in Splitgate 2, the portals have become more of an obstacle. The sequel doubled down on portal complexity, but it offered little in terms of onboarding or player training. New players just get dropped into what is essentially competitive matches because of skill-based matchmaking, with minimal guidance leading to confusion, frustration, and one-sided stomps. What once felt like a clever innovation now felt like a barrier to entry. Instead of enhancing the experience, the portals in Splitgate 2 made the game harder to read, harder to enjoy, and much harder to sell to a mainstream audience. And Splitgate still sits at this mixed rating on Steam, with only about 60 to 65% of the reviews being positive. These main complaints consist of inconsistent gunplay and hit detection, bland map design despite updated visuals, confusing menus and interfaces, overpriced cosmetic, and a general sense of a game that was rushed and unfinished. So Splitgate 2 is more than just a failed sequel. It's a case study in how not to handle a growing franchise. It had every advantage, a unique concept, a loyal fan base, serious financial backing, and people just being tired of the state of Call of Duty and Halo and where's Titanfall 3 and people just wanting to see FPS be great again. But it squandered all of that through a combination of technical missteps, some absolutely tone-deaf moments from the CEO, poor onboarding, and strategic blunders. Splitgate 2 did not need to be revolutionary. It just needed to respect what made the original game work. Instead, it erased its own identity in pursuit of something flashier, but far more shallower. In the end, Splitgate 2 is less a sequel and more a warning, kind of like Overwatch 2 in a lot of ways. Creative mechanics and hype can only carry a game so far. Without execution, without community trust, without humility, even the most exciting ideas can fall apart. The portal may still be open, but fewer and fewer players are stepping through. What? I thought that was a creative way to end a video.